everyone! The contemporary issue that I'll be covering today is social media in education. First off, before we get into the main topics, here are some questions I would like you to think about. Firstly, why is social media relevant in education? Next, who benefits the most from using social media in education? And do we use social media or are we being used by social media? So, first off, what exactly is social media? According to some studies, social media are online platforms that allow individuals to explore and acquire new information, exchange ideas, and connect with other individuals and organizations. So, how can we put social media to good use in education? There are many ways that we can incorporate it and integrate it in our teaching methods. So, social media provides opportunities for collaborative learning and global networking. This means that people from all over the world can take part in remote learning whenever necessary. With opportunities for remote learning, also comes real-time information sharing between students, and peer feedback and discussions can be done. One very effective way social media can be used in learning would be to provide personalized learning. For example, on TikTok, if a user often watches and interacts with videos where they learn language skills, the algorithm will recommend more content from language tutors and related educational creators, in turn creating a personalized learning feed on their interests. Professional development can also take place by enabling educators to connect and share resources with online communities. For example, educators on X, which was formerly known as Twitter, use hashtags like @chat, @chat, to participate in global discussions and share practices and new teaching strategies with each other. Social media also provide educators with the space to showcase their works of their students, which could be a demonstration of their teaching methods and derivatives of the activities. So the last point would be parent-teacher communication, where it's just easier for parents and teachers to communicate with each other on top of the usual quarterly or biannual parent-teachers meeting. Next would be the key stakeholders of social medias in education. To me, that basically means who are the most affected by the use of social media in education, or who has an effect on social media and in education. So the main stakeholders are definitely the educators and the students, because they are the ones who are using it the most for their lessons. Next would be parents and policymakers. I feel like parents would be more of communication between parents and teachers, bridging the gap between house and school. And for policymakers, it's important because they are the decision makers at the end of the day on how social media can be incorporated and integrated in our education system. Like for the older children or students, it is encouraged in Singapore that they learn how to use social media as part of their education. But for the younger ones, definitely there is a lesser need of that, because for the younger children, less screen time is better. Yep. While there have been many debates on the topics of social media and education, I will just share 4 that I have found to be more prominent in my research on this topic. First would be the engagement versus distraction. Does social media enhance or hinder academic performance and skill development? So to support the engagement, there are studies that show that social media can help increase students' motivation and engagement with more personalized learning. On the flip side, social media has also been known to be a distraction to students, and this could be internal or external distractors. An example of an external distractor would be hearing the sound of the notification bell on a text message and you want to go and reply the text right away. Internal distractors would be more of individuals thinking about wanting to use social media because they want to be caught up with the day's biggest gossip or news. So these are factors that could cause distractions, but I feel that these are in control of the people who are using the social media. these are things that can be managed. Next would be the teacher-student communication versus blurred boundaries. So how do educators balance the benefits of social media with concerns about interactions online? So good communication on one hand provides the opportunity for students to follow their teachers online and ask their teachers questions directly through messages on the platforms, and it also gives teachers the opportunities to provide personalized answers to help students learn. So there's also a flip side to this. There are ethical, pedagogical, and concerns. So the ethical concerns could be the privacy of social media, where it could be misused or inadequately protected, especially when students and teachers are able to interact online. Pedagogical concerns could be the blurring of professional lines, which could undermine the professional respect and authority of the teacher-student dynamic and linked to inappropriate or unprofessional interactions. So for example, in the context of Singapore, there was recently a case where there was a teacher-student relation between a 12-year-old student at that time and a 26-year-old teacher. So these are very worrying, very troublesome, and we would hope that these can be mitigated. These issues could be mitigated to cut out these problems. Next would be the student's voice versus misinformation. So how can we address the spread of misinformation and deepfakes in education? Through social media, students have a platform to engage in dialogues and conversations, and through these platforms, their voices are amplified in educational spaces. However, we have to be very careful of misinformation, as not everything that is shared and posted online might be true, especially when everyone is able to post online. So there could be false and misleading narratives, and a lot of verification needs to be done to prevent the spreading of misinformation. This could, in a sense, affect students' performance, as it could come off as a lack of understanding or deep research done to understand the topics by the students. So like for us, when we do research, we always counter check with other papers and other people's comments to make sure that there is a line of similarity and that consistency. Lastly would be the ease of access versus lack of access to social media. The question of this debate would be, are there disparities in access that exacerbate educational inequalities? So the fortunate bunch of us, we do have the ease of access to social media, where we are able to take part in global learning communities and access resources very simply, very easily. However, we tend to forget that there's also a group of people who lack access to social media. This could be due to socio-economic factors, geographic factors, or just gender inequality. So socio-economic factors are quite straightforward. Low-income families may find it more difficult to purchase devices to access social media. A similar concept to geographic differences, where not everywhere in this world has ease of access to the internet and social media. As for gender inequalities, it was found that females in less developed countries may have more difficulties accessing social media. An example of this was India, where the girls actually have lesser access to social media because they hold on to the old mindset and view where ladies are homemakers and do not need this luxury. Yeah. But for us in Singapore, we are quite fortunate, especially in our primary school and secondary schools, as children from low-income households are allowed to use the computers at school in the computer labs for their e-learning or for the use of education as a whole. And when they move on to later years of education, especially in polytechnics, they are offered they are offered like subsidies on their devices so that they can access the platforms that are needed. So why does social media in education matter to us at all. Social media basically reflects modern communication patterns and changes in society. It prepares us, students, especially students, for a world where digital interaction are currently mainstream and important for success. It challenges the traditional education paradigms, encouraging innovation and the involvement of teaching methods, and it has the potential to foster inclusivity across all cultural exchanges. A great example would be like our lesson right now, where we are all located all over the world, but we still have the opportunity to learn together, and through this we do learn about each other's cultures too, which is very meaningful. So personally, I feel like the most important thing when it comes to social media in education is to have a balance when using it. So we as users, we have full control of how and what we want to use social media for. And we try to strike the balance by leveraging its benefits for collaboration and engagement while still setting our boundaries to maintain professionalism. We focus on using it positively for educational purposes and ensuring that the content is relevant and that interactions are meaningful and respectful, and that we are being mindful of privacy and avoiding distraction. So here's my simple infographic that basically summarizes everything I've covered. I feel like overall the debates that surround this topic are mainly about the pros and cons of social media use in education. One thing to highlight that I think I didn't include in more elaborately would be the cyberbullying, because of the anonymity of online platforms where people don't have to actually use their actual particulars in while making use of this social media. There is a rise of cyberbullying, and we do have to find ways that we can mitigate this and reduce it, because there are very, very severe consequences of it. Trauma is one. Worst off, there are people who are committing suicide because of it. So that is something that we have to look into. And also the over reliance of on technology. So we are so used to having everything online on social media at our fingertips that we sometimes worry that someday if social media cease to exist, we might not be able to learn as well as we have so far. So here's my narrative portrait on how a social media in education has helped in an educator find herself again. So Naomi is a preschool teacher who has worked in the industry for 4 years, and this is her experience. I've always taken pride in creating a nurturing and engaging learning environment for my students. About a year back, I hit a low point where I felt trapped. Despite my efforts, I couldn't connect with the parents or share my passions for teaching meaningfully. I felt like my teaching and efforts were confined to the four walls of my classroom. At that time, I only relied on traditional parent-teacher meetings and weekly newsletters. I spoke to my principal and colleagues about it, and she suggested exploring social media as a tool for education. Of course, I hesitated at first. Social media has always been about celebrity gossips and keeping up with friends, a distraction rather than a tool. To use it as an educational tool, that's new. Nonetheless, I tried my hand at it. I began posting photos of the activities, events, and the nitty-gritty moments in class where children were just basking in joy. On top of those, I posted some tips parents could try at home. The response was overwhelming, and the parents engaged with the post, commenting on how much some of the photos meant to them and sharing their tips and tricks. Through this, I've unwittingly created a social community for the families. It bridged the gap between school and home. Since then, social media has been a significant extension of my classroom, where learning is shared, celebrated, and fostered. That's the end of my presentation. Here are some of the references that I used in this presentation, and thank you so much for listening.